Well, I'm honored to have Advocate Richard Botha with me again today, and I have pledged that I will stay away from the Boerans and only speak Afrikaans or English. But it will be tough, I think, because the topics that we're handling are the things that really triggers me. The first thing I want to ask you, Richard, is I've seen a subtle change over the past 30 years in the position of representatives in Parliament. They have moved away from the position where they are actually representing us into a position where they can do as they like and we must just take it. What do you think about that?
I'm inclined to agree with you, and I think the reasons for it is money. At the end of the day, it's the political game has become a money game, where your income now as a politician, I mean, from the lowest level of government, even as a councillor, you get paid quite an extensive salary to be in that system. Remember, in the past, before the new dispensation, I mean, local councillors weren't paid.
No.
They were there representing people, and they had their daily jobs, and they were part of the community, so they had a true feel of what was happening within the community. But the new dispensation, I think what has happened is that you now have councillors, which I was one, I apologize, that you get paid, in excess of 40,000 Rand a month by council to be a councillor.
The thing that disturbs me is in the old days, the civil servants and these people, they got salaries that made it possible for them to have a decent life and so. But that was it. Today, I mean, the other day I saw that article. Yes, like I think 500 or 5,000 or 50,000 millionaires created by civil servant salaries. How the hell is that possible? It is frightening. I want to ask you this. I am of the opinion that the current government is on the verge of a collapse.
Yeah.
For the simple reason that the foundation of a government is their ability to give civil service. And all the government departments that are supposed to give that service has collapsed. They're fraught, they're non-functional. So that is, for me, there's a vacuum now under the government. And then you add to it the fact that they are financially screwed. You don't need to be an accountant to understand that these guys are in severe financial trouble. They cannot survive on their income. They cannot. Now, I'm of the opinion that this government is going to collapse. And I said it to a guy the other night in a debate. I said to him, I also don't think it's going to be a slow slide into the final run into the pit. It is going to be a matter of they'll be here on Friday and on Monday they're gone. What do you think about that?
You see, the thing is, as long as SARS is collecting taxes, there is a level of maintenance that will stay. I mean, at the level that maintains itself. I think the biggest slide that we've seen is that government no longer focuses on core function. It focuses on salaries. It focuses on paying government officials salaries. And that's been the main focus for a long time. If you look at the growth in the number of employees in the government sector, I mean, it's gone through the 2 million mark, and it's not as if there's functionality still within council. I mean, if you think of what government used to look like, and I don't like looking at past, but past always gives us a good indicator of what is potentially going wrong. I mean, most of the functionality of government now is outsourced. where you used to have a roads department that actually did the roads. Now it's out on tender, and a lot of the main functionalities out on tender. So the whole dynamics of government has changed. You know, the social contract was that government did for the people what the people couldn't do for themselves.
Yes.
But if you're tendering it out, then it's the people doing it for themselves again.
I understand exactly what you're saying. And the thing that is more disturbing is this roads department that is outsourcing everything. The staff contingent of that department is double of what it used to be.
Has grown, exactly. And this is the problem.
So you've got more people to do less work.
Yes. If you do a simple thing like debt collection, I mean, the government is now outsourcing its debt collection.
How is that?
I mean, when their primary function as government is to collect money, that is their primary function. And now you're outsourcing your primary function to an outside functionary because you can't do it yourself. You see, it's these sort of things that make you realize how broken the system actually is. So, and that all government has become is a feeding trough. For people to make money out of it.
Let's agree on that. It is a disaster, and it is a managerial disaster, nothing else. The other reality, and you can see that, and that was most disturbing to me, is with the harbors. When I did I mentioned it in a few of my Skidmarks, and then somebody contacted me that is in the shipping industry. And he said to me, Colleen, you must understand one thing. The private sector has made a decision not to take any work from Transnet for harbor work anymore. And I said, what the hell do you mean? And he said, well, first of all, if they pay us very late. Plus, they are forever on our case of loading this and loading that onto the contracts to be paid out to other carriers, which means that by definition, we participate in the corruption. And we decided we're going to step away from it. And then he said to me, with the increased traffic around our coast, the services that used to be rendered to these passing freighters, like refreshing their food supplies, medical assistance, little maintenance jobs out on sea, not in the harbors. He said that has totally evaporated, where it was a big industry employing a lot of people. That is now handled by agents that they have here in South Africa. The shipping companies bring containers full of everything that they need. And I was surprised. He said to me that a lot of the produce that they want for the ships comes from Ghana. And I said to him, okay, so they don't buy anything local. He said, very, very, very little. In an emergency, they'll buy something local. They've now rented their own choppers, and they've got a space there on the port where their containers are stacked, and they service the ships directly from there. No more third party. That's a lot of money lost to the economy, Richard.
Well, I think that's the general trend, don't you? If you look at it, I mean, everything that generated wealth for us has been on the decline for a very long period of time now. I mean, we don't really have much left within our economy that is a wealth generator. Other than agriculture, which we still export a little bit of, and minerals that we export a little bit of. I mean, our iron ore industry has been decimated. With that, our engineering capacity has been decimated. What else do we really manufacture in order to generate wealth? I mean, I think we're living on, I agree with you when you say we're living on borrowed time. I think we're living on borrowed money as well. I mean, it's the inevitability is if you don't create wealth, you cannot generate income. And if you cannot generate income, then you've got to borrow it. And unfortunately, we're becoming very good at that. We're becoming very good at borrowing it. It comes home to roost eventually. I mean, eventually you got to pay the bill. And that's when government falls apart. But I think it's a notion that's happening everywhere. I think it's a general impoverishment of the masses that is taking place, not just in South Africa. I think it has a bit of a broader scope. And unfortunately, that seems to be the trend.
Now, government is supposed to give certain services that is vital to the country.
The core services, yeah. Your electricity and things like that, yeah.
Yeah. And the Justice Department plays a major role in maintaining some sense of order in the country. Am I correct?
Supposed to, yes.
Now we've got this situation in Groblersdal, which is a really disturbing situation. But the thing that I want to talk about is you get a guy like Louis Liebenberg that comes onto the scene and he makes public statements about the prosecutor, about the magistrate. He ties them to political parties, and he implies that he is in consultation with them. And I ask myself, okay, what is he actually saying here? He's actually saying that a private person is manipulating the court system. And I think back about my days, okay, it's days in the 70s and the 80s, not 80s, in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. If a guy made a statement like that in those days, the moment that thing hit the press, he was behind bars.
Yeah.
For interference
in
the judicial process.
Yes.
But this guy walks around totally untouched. And then he includes Minister Cele and Lamola in all his allegations and statements and things that he do. And I sit there with myself and I think, okay, who is actually behind this guy? Who is actually behind him? Because if I look at it from the ANC viewpoint, stuff like that implicates them severely as a governing party. But nobody says a word about it. What is your impression about this, Richard?
I must admit, him as a person, I've watched his rhetoric for a long time now. And I haven't put much stock in what he says. I'll be honest. He seems to be a fringe player that's been around for a long time and that has tried to play that fringe for a fair amount of time. If we're talking about the same person, I mean, he was originally with the ANC, and now he's wearing EFF colors.
Oh no! You're talking about, as I call him, Karel Kakijs. I'm talking about Louis Liebenberg.
Oh, Louis Liebenberg. Okay, I'm sorry. I was talking about the wrong person. Louis Liebenberg. Give me a bit of an indication. Sorry.
That is the guy that rocked up on the scene into Groblersdal and basically took over the whole social scene there. And he was now working with a prosecutor and the magistrate and things like that.
We have a lot of people that say these sort of things, and a lot of people that jump in on the scene, and a lot of people that try to become renowned. I don't know why. I mean, the last thing I would want to do is become renowned for things. You know what I mean? There is due process.
Yes. But he interferes in it.
If there's interference in due process, then the whole thing falls apart, So no matter what happens at the end of the day, your justice system falls apart. And being an advocate, there's still a level of judicial process, although we know that it's questionable at times, but there's still judicial process taking place. Unless he's representing these guys as their legal representative, the public prosecutor is not going to talk to him. They're
But
allowed legal
this is the
representation.
thing. That's the thing that stuns me.
Yeah.
He's got no loci standi, zero. But he runs the show. And
But
I
who
am
allows him
wondering.
to run the show? This is
Exactly.
and does he run the show, or is it just rhetoric?
Yeah, that's
I've
the
heard a
thing.
lot of people say a lot of things. You understand what I'm saying? I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things, and one thing I've learned in life is a lot of times you got to take things with a pinch of salt, because
With a bag of salt sometimes.
or even a bag of salt. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You know how many people you've interviewed and people you've been involved with, that you listen to them and you know that you have to. For instance, and I know I shouldn't be dragging this into it. I was listening to some rhetoric from one of the Mulder brothers talking about the fact that we should wait for the opportune time so that that we can make these things happen, but it has to be the opportune time. So let's look at it. 30 years later, we've got, I think the Freedom Front is on 1.5% or 2.5%. We see that the DA isn't growing so wapperly. It's not growing so lekker. We see the EFF is growing very fast and seems to be taking up the shortfall on the ANC side. So whenever is going to be the opportune time?
Exactly.
Unless we go out and fetch it. You see, this is rhetoric. That is rhetoric. That is saying things that have no basis in reality, and that's not taking your future in your own hands and making sure you make a difference by going out there and fighting for it. Fighting for that future you're trying to achieve.
You know what, Richard? You have now dragged me into this because I was getting to this, but I'm sure you have taken note of the Battle of Centurion, clean the pigsty campaign that we ran. And then comes a few things happens in it that makes me ask serious questions. I'm not going to talk about the things that preceded the 2nd of February, but let's look at the day of the 2nd February. Here is a number of protesters. I don't even want to call them protesters. I'm going to call them unhappy supporters of the Freedom Front Plus. Unhappy.
Yeah.
They arrived there all the notifications were given to Freedom Front, on the legal and technical side. Wessel made sure he followed all the rules. So they arrived there at the offices of the Freedom Front Plus. What do they get there? First of all, a good police presence, which in the view and the light of Groblersdal, I can understand. But on the other side of the line, I'm going to call it on the Freedom Front Plus side of the line, what do we find there? 3 private security companies protecting the officers. A number of clearly definable bouncers. And the Freedom Front refuses to take the memorandum from the unhappy people. So, and it was arranged that they would take it. So Wessel phones Pieter Groenewald. I'm not going to discuss the whole discussion, but Wessel says to him, why are you not here to receive this? This was arranged with you. And wata. And then Wessel said, now you send the IT guy to come and take it from us. What is this? And then make the remark. If you step over that line, you will be arrested. What the hell is that? A political party leader threatening his voters to the police. What is the message that you, as a politically aware guy and a legal guy, What is the message that you get from that action, Richard?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation because where you are representing, and I think that there was an old saying, your customer's always right.
Yeah.
And in politics, your supporter's always right, in that at the end of the day, like you said, you're representing them. Look, antagonism is not the best form of approach with things, and I think that we've learned a bit from the rest of the world, that antagonism actually works. So the art of being able to converse and put across your ideas and another person actually listening, I think, is being lost within our world quite fast. And I believe that, unfortunately, our politicians have become infected with the same problem, is that antagonism is utilized in order to try and put a point across, instead of trying to persuade people. Unfortunately, I think that one tends to, as a politician nowadays, forget your role as being a servant of the people, but rather see your role as the ruler of the people.
Exactly. Now, the problem that I have, here we are, the supporters of the party, but the leadership of that party, point number one, refuses to receive our grudges. They refuse to acknowledge what we are saying. Plus, they sick the police onto us. Then I ask myself,
Their
okay.
argument is always going to be, Ghislaine, their argument's going to be that at the end of the day, there's procedure, there's party procedure, and we've heard this with the ANC as well. I mean, because they have a lot of dissent within their ranks as well. That there's party procedure, and if you have a complaint and you're a member of the party, then you have to follow the process to get it done. My thought would be, if I were in somebody's position within that party, would be that obviously my systems aren't working. If the members of my party feel it prudent to come to my front door and make a noise in order to get my attention, my first question would be, why are my internal processes not working that would have allowed these complaints to come up to me so that I could have dealt with those complaints internally? So it's actually, when my feeling is, when you react that way, you're just not recognizing that there might be a problem with your processes. So,
I understand exactly what you're trying to say. Now, my bottom line question on it stays, if you were in that position that protesters, unhappy people were knocking at your door, the right thing to do is for you to walk out and say, guys, can I help?
How can I help you? I mean, that's the right thing to do. It's like the
You're
manager
not sitting the
walking
police and security guys onto them.
No, you see,
They're not
it's
there
like,
to rob your place.
no.
They're unhappy.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that, it's like that bad manager that's not willing to go and help a customer and just chases them out. That is, in my mind, that is a possibility that, but like I said, it's that mindset. Are you a servant of the people, or are you the ruler of the people?
What is at the core of the unhappiness? At the core of the unhappiness is the fact that for 30 years, which is there, everybody can go and check it, nothing was done in accordance with the Afrikaner Accord or 235. Nothing was done. Lots of stories now, suddenly, but for 30 years, nothing. And the second point is, the same guys that are suspected of crashing the Afrikaner Accord initially are still sitting in control of the Freedom Front Plus. The same crowd. They have actually developed into I call it a royal elite inside that party, and they have managed to insulate themselves so well that the guys in the lower ranks has got no chance of ever moving any one of them out of their seats. And then I come to the conclusion that's a dictatorship.
Well, if there's no way of affecting, if your constitution doesn't allow you to affect change, yes, then you are in a dictatorship, because even constitutions can be drawn up incorrectly and can be drawn up to secure positions and things like that. Look, like I don't know their constitution, and I don't know how it's set up, but I would think that if there was a notion from the people, but you see, that's you have to understand that you're always going to have individuals that are opposed to you.
Yeah.
And you have to have order within a structure. So I have to be fair in that aspect of it. You can have fringe elements within every environment. So you have to be fair around that. But if you've got, from what I've heard happened, and this is just what I've heard, that there was, people that were elected into positions and then taken out of positions from an undue process, and there's those sort of things happening, yes, then I would say that that's a manipulation of the system, and you're heading towards a dictatorship.
You see, Richard, I'm of the opinion that what they did on Friday the 2nd in Centurion, that action that they took and the route that they chose there was a major strategic error. And it is, for me, I'm a fairly good analyst. For me, it is something that they can't really recover from. How can they recover from it? Because they simply refused to take into to receive a list of the complaints. I said to a guy, I said, if you go and you look at the ANC and the EFF and these unions, they're always toying and they're always protesting.
And they always take the demands.
Always there is a senior guy taking the paper. He gets booed and he gets shouted at and all of that. But he takes the paper, he signs for it. If he gets the opportunity to say something, he says something. If he can't, he walks away, but at least they accept the papers. And here comes the Freedom Front and says, we're not going to touch that thing. And I say, yeah, how's that politically clever? The cleverness is broken.
You see, that's why I said it. It depends how you see yourself. And you see, you've raised an interesting point here, Kalain. It's if you're not willing to listen, then you're not a good leader.
No, exactly.
How many times have you heard a good leader is that person that surrounds himself with clever people?
Yes.
That is able to listen to those clever people around.
Yeah.
That's a good leader. A good leader.
A practical example. Look at Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got the best of the best around him. He's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov. That guy is a monster when it comes to intelligence and insight, and he's got a hell of a nice demeanor. In his own way, he looks so serious, but he rips a hole like this through you with sarcasm.
Yeah.
And that is what we don't have. I did a Skidmark yesterday, I think, in which I said that where's the leaders? Where's the real leaders? Look at the guys dancing on the stages. They're the main players. But there's no leader there. There's not one that when he stands up, and he talks. Doesn't matter his party affiliation or what, you are inclined to listen to him. You don't,
Yeah.
because there's no respect. And that is something that bothers me, that our political environment has deteriorated to such a place that we, the voters, are accepting rubbish that is standing there, dancing there. Guys with, there's guys there with reputations and with histories, and so that you think to yourself, how the hell can that guy actually be in public face? He's not only in public face, he's running the show. And I think to myself, my ma het my van baie klein af geleer. By your friends, you will be known.
Yeah.
Those that you associate with, they will reflect who you are. But that has evaporated. Let's get to another interesting thing that we're going to make you laugh. You're now very serious. And this is something that will get the Boerans going in me. But I said the other night in a discussion, the Boere are always claiming to be so clever. Boer maak 'n plan. I'll always make a plan. And I said to the guy, and I've got a lot of respect for him, and I said to him, I think it is time that we look at a unique solution for South Africa, because the race and tribal realities cannot be ignored.
No.
And those fault lines are now under so much pressure that an earthquake is all that can release the pressure.
Yeah.
To me, it is inevitable that this republic is going to break apart.
Yeah.
It is going to break apart. The stress is just too big. After 30 years of rainbow stories, it has now reached a point where there's a lot of people that are unhappy about what happened to their homelands, what happened to their traditions, what happened to their culture, and they are awakening to it. And I said to him, if we look, and now I may have the thing maybe wrong, but and I'm going to call it the ULA plan. That is the thing that was started by Marx, and you discussed it, and so forth. And to me, that is a good plan. I think that's the only way forward. But the reality is, due to the potpourri of cultures in our country, we will have to look at the content of this region, and it will break into pieces, and there is going to be little republics. There's going to be little democracies. There's even going to be little kingdoms,
monarchies,
and there's going to be little dictatorships, because certain tribes, all they want is a headman, nothing else. That's all they want, a chief, and that's the end of the story. And we will have to find the playing field in which all of these guys can be comfortable. So it cannot be a chessboard, it cannot be a domino table, it cannot be a snakes and ladders, it cannot be a monopoly. It has to be a mix of all of that for those cantons where they can thrive and live in happiness. But the confederation will be very important to make all of them thrive and survive. What do you think about that?
Well, you see, I think, first of all, you've got to recognize where the problem came from.
Yeah.
Because if you recognize where the problem came from, then you can come up with the solution. I mean, if we look at every country in Africa, like we've stated before, every country in Africa was divided up on a map. The lines were drawn, and there it went. There was no recognition of the realities of those countries.
The tribal realities.
The tribal realities. There was never a recognition of that. And there was a reason for it. We know the reason being that if you want to set up power base, then you've got to do away with all other power bases. and a tribe is a power base. That's why guys like Cyril Ramaphosa will always talk against tribalism, because you know that he's trying to set up his communist state, his centralist state. So you've got to get rid of any other power bases, and that will be the tribes. I mean, that is decentralization of power, is recognition of tribes. The minute you recognize tribes, you recognize that power has to be decentralized.
Yes.
I mean,
I agree 100% with you.
That's a reality. So it's like I once had a discussion with a person, actually from the Vryheidsfront, many years ago, one of their rank and file members. And I discussed and I said, you know, the biggest trick that the Vryheidsfront could have, the biggest trick, is to encourage the minority groups into. But then you got to give up power. You got to be willing to give up power. And how do you give up power? You create the different elements within your Vryheidsfront. So you have the Zulu, the Xhosa, the Venda, the Pedi, and they represent themselves and they come together as a collective within the party to take the way forward.
Yeah.
So therefore the
Brilliant. That's a brilliant plan.
The Afrikaner would have to give up power, but you don't allow any one group to dominate the other. So everything's based on consensus, and I mean consensus. If you don't have consensus, it doesn't happen. You've got the art of persuasion. You've got to be able to discuss your matter, and you've got to be able to persuade the person next to you to make it happen.
The fact is, if you are in discussions like that, you need to recognize the fact that all people are not the same.
And that's it. And you've got to recognize your differences, and you've got to respect those differences.
And you must be clever and manage those differences to the advantage of the collective.
That's it.
And
now you see it perfect.
Here I am. Who am I? I'm a commentator that jumped onto the scene about a year ago, and I raised a lot of hair and I made people's eyes go wide. But over the time, I have unleashed into public debate issues that everybody dodged for 30 years.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to talk about those things. And I forced it into the face of the people. And here I sit and I get messages from senior Zulu guys. And they say, pipes and so forth. Can you send me a copy of the Afrikaner Accord? And I say, okay, why do you want that? And he said, no, we just want to see what really happened at that stage. And I said, no, I've got a better suggestion. Let me put you into contact with a guy that understands this process inside out.
Yeah.
And I asked Hein, and he said he's willing to talk to them. And then me and Hein did that little chat in English about 235 and all of that, and secession and things like that. And I did that specifically for this guy because he said to me, I must give something to the king. I must get the king and the prime minister to listen to these things. So me and Hein did that thing, and the guy let me know, okay, we've had them. They listened to this, and we will contact Hein. And lo and behold, 2 days ago, the Zulu prime minister comes out and says, we want out. And I think to myself, okay, I'm not going to be so arrogant to say that I played a role in that. But the practical reality is, I know that I've been in discussion with the people that is in his councils.
Look, the reality is we're symbiotic.
How the hell is it that me, a boer sitting here on my little farm, I'm 72 years old, I can get these types of discussions going? Where's the political leaders? Where? What do you say about that, Richard?
We are symbiotic. That's what you got to understand. As people, we're symbiotic. We are connected. We're connected through speech and those aspects of our lives. We're connected in every way. And I believe that a leader is not someone that places himself at the top.
No,
A
you're
leader
right.
is placed there by the people.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, a leader doesn't push his way to the top and say, "I'm the leader."
Yeah. You're right.
The
You're
leader is
100% right.
a true leader is a person that the people say, "We want to follow him." There's the leader.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is a true servant leader.
You're so right with that, Richard. I agree 100% with you. The thing is this, and I'm not going to throw names and drop names and things like that, but the people that I'm talking to and that I have contact with, when a Zulu guy says to me, I say to him, okay, say for instance, you take Natal and you UDI. What happens to the Boerieland there? And he says, we have to recognize that our kings signed the deals. Here is the contracts. We cannot deny that because it's part of our royal family. They signed those papers. We can't deny it. I said, okay, now what's going to happen to the Boere there? And he said, what do you mean what's going to happen to them? We want them here. If they go, we die of hunger. Why would we make stupid mistakes like that? I said, okay, that's interesting. Then another guy comes to me and he says to me, Blaine, many of them don't distinguish between the Afrikaner and the Boer. And he comes to me and he says to me, Blaine, I'm worried about the Afrikaners. I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, if conflict breaks out, they're going to be caught in the middle. And I said, okay, I understand that. I've said it many times. The Boer must stay out of this thing because, unfortunately, there are a lot of commentators that are totally ignorant of the fact and the reality that there's a lot of pent-up anger in the black tribes towards one another.
Which we need to stop.
Yeah, but the Boer did it for how long?
But you see, the thing is, what you got to understand, we can't afford, not us, not anybody in this country can afford that anger to erupt. We can't afford it. I mean, we gave away the power in 1994 to ensure that conflict doesn't erupt. Okay, we gave it away. We could have held on. We could have carried on fighting, and we could have lasted for a lot longer. Whatever. What did we do? We gave it up to stop conflict. Right now, for us to now turn around and just let it happen, we can't afford that.
Yeah, but now, Richard,
we need to come up with a solution.
Yes,
and what you are discussing, Colleen, is the solution. That is the solution. The solution is the recognition of every single group in South Africa as being important, not secondary, not this one is more important than that one. No matter how small, no matter how big, every single one is important. Which means the North Sotho and the Pedi and the Hindebele are just as important as the Zulu and the Xhosa and the Tswana.
Yes.
You understand? They are just as important.
And amazingly enough, Richard, the feedback that I get, most of the guys understand that and they recognize that.
But we're fighting people.
And then you get this situation of, we are now unfortunately in the position that Ramaphosa knows if that happens, he's gone.
Well, his dream is dead. The dream of a centralized communist state is dead. Marxism fails. It's gone.
Yeah.
Because Marxism, the state has to become the identity.
Now, the thing is this. If I look at, and if I listen to the guys, because as I was negotiating with the Zulu guys and talking, not negotiating, don't want to say that word, talking to them, and we are exchanging ideas and so forth. Here from the side, I get a message. And the guy said to me, listen, the Tswanas, they want in on this discussion. I said, okay. I'm unfortunately not connected with them and so forth. I've got a good I've got a good feeling towards the Zulus. I grew up in Zululand, and so
Yeah.
that's it. But okay, and then the same guy comes to me and he says to me, Kulain, I'm getting messages from the Xhosas. They want the same thing, and I say, oh, okay. So this tribal thing is actually much bigger and vibrant than we are realizing or seeing. And I can understand that it is being suppressed by the government, because if the tribal thing happens, the first thing that will evaporate is that 400 seats in Cape Town is gone.
It becomes irrelevant.
They're gone. That Zulu prime minister said it, and he said, we cannot take it that Cape Town is running the show in Zululand.
I mean, the whole optics, like I said last time, the whole optics of a Zulu king bowing to a president to get the right to rule over his people. I mean, that is just wrong on every level. You know what I mean? It's just wrong on every level.
And
it just doesn't make sense at all.
And you know what, Richard? I did a few Skidmarks. I did one Skidmark specifically on which I focused on that.
Yeah.
How they have been, how their royal house has actually been castrated.
Yes.
And I got messages back from guys that said, yeah, you've now opened up a can of worms here. And I said, oh, but that's the reality.
The truth is the truth.
And the guys, and you see, exactly the same scenario in there as we have among the Boere. Same scenario. There are conservative people, of which the Boere is the conservative faction of the Afrikaners.
Yeah.
That are committed to their cultural history. And these guys are now realizing, but our culture has been emasculated.
Decimated.
And they say and then I get this, just like it, I get this message 2 days ago from a guy. And he says to me, Kulain, you don't want to know the amounts of money that is being spent by XXX here in Zululand. All the royalty, all the chiefs, all of them are being bribed and corrupted by, and he says it, bribed and corrupted by Stellenbosch. I said, what the hell? And he said, you know what? They're playing both sides of the coin here. Doesn't matter who takes control, they still are in control. And I said, and you guys are going to accept that? And he said, no way. I said, but how are you going to handle that? And he said, listen, our tradition will tell you exactly how we deal with traitors. I said, okay, I'm not going to word it. I know exactly what they're talking about. I mean, why is the famous Chaka's Rock there? This is the thing. And I've said it to a guy last night. I said to him, the biggest nightmare for South Africa, the biggest nightmare is a civil war in Zululand.
No, the biggest nightmare is a civil war.
That's it. Richard,
it's plain and simple.
That will come.
I mean,
the trigger lies in Zululand. Because
I don't think we're not going to require a civil war. I believe I believe the answer that we have is not just for South Africa. I mean, if you take Botswana and Botswana, I mean, it's one grouping. The one family has links on the other side of the border, and vice versa, and all those sort of aspects. We've got to realize that these boundaries were drawn by guys sitting on with a pen and a piece of paper, going, okay, we're going to draw it over there. We're going to draw this over there. We're going to draw that over there. We need to remap it completely.
I understand that, and I'm with you.
Understand that these countries that were created for a specific reason, to get rid of identity.
I just want to clarify this. I'm not promoting what I'm talking about in Zululand. I'm talking about the reality on the ground.
Yes.
Because one of my guys sent me a message and he said to me, we've got a problem we made a promise to Prince Buthelezi that we will not take the violent option. And I said, yes, I understand that. That's how I know him, and that is, I understand that. And he said, but now we have a problem.
Because he's not there anymore.
Our royal house has been corrupted, and we are being pushed into a corner where we have no option but to fight out of that corner, fight ourselves out of that corner. And I said, okay, I can understand that, but you do realize that if that happens, the whole country is going to go up in flames. And he said, yes. And that is why we are trying to get ourselves out of this fix by talking to these people. But then he says that you're aware what happened with that king that is in charge now. That court case said, okay, you're not the king.
Yeah.
And my information is midway in that case, Triple X pulled themselves out of it and pulled their support from the king. And because they knew they're going to lose. They lost it. My contact says to me, he has now accepted that, and he will go, but he wants money, and we're not going to pay it. I said, okay, what then? He said, no, let's try, let's see, let's see. 2 days later, he comes to me and said, okay, somebody has offered the money for the guy to go. Don't tell me to offer the money, I don't know. Just tell me this. Is going to be action. And the next moment, Cyril appealed. Now what? What now?
Unless you understand the game, you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You see, these are power bases that need to be destroyed in order
Yes.
to centralize power. And unfortunately, we're fighting against the natural order of things when we try and do that. Because I believe it's the tribes and nations are the natural order of things.
Yes.
And it was meant as a counterbalance against autocracies.
Yes.
That is what tribes and nations are about. It counters authoritarian rule. It's a counterbalance to authoritarian rule. And whenever you look at the world's history, the biggest problems we've ever had is when these big powers try and force other people into following them.
Yeah.
That's where the big problems have come from in our societies, in our world. So when
you group people together that doesn't belong together.
But it's not just that. It's not that they don't belong together. It's that they're not meant to belong together. What they're meant to do is cooperate with one another.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference to being forced into a single identity and in cooperation. Look at what has happened to America. America, 52 independent states, thrived as a nation. What has the biggest problem been lately? Is that central power that has been put over it has now bankrupted them basically because they've printed money and they've spent money on federal things.
Yes.
The bill lies where? In the states. That's who eventually has to pay the bill.
A guy that I discussed it with a few months ago, I was in a discussion with him, and he lives in Texas, and this oak is well connected into the establishment in Texas. And he said to me, the problem that they have is that they know that the dollar is going to evaporate, basically.
Yes.
They know it. And he said, a lot of people make a lot of noise about $32 trillion overdraft. And he said, Colleen, but you must understand, federal debt, if you add in all the right down to municipality level debts, it is a number that you can't get onto a piece of paper, man. And I said, okay, but what the hell are you going to do about it? He said, look, we're busy working on a digital dollar that will be gold-based. And we like what Putin is talking about in BRICS, about a commodity, a basket of commodities. But for Texas, I know that the guys that are working on that part, they are buying gold like hell currently. And for now, it looks like that digital dollar will be based on gold. And I said, okay. And I said to him, but now this was about 5 months ago, Richard. I said to him, okay, what do you think is going to happen? And he said, well, look, the thing is this. In February 2020, we ran a poll in which the question was, what is the chances for, or is there a chance for civil war? And 24% voted yes. No, sorry, 14% voted yes.
Yeah.
That was in February 2020. They reran that same poll in February 2023. I give you a guess, what was the percentage saying yes?
The 24.
64%. And he
Well,
said to me,
if you think of what's happened since then, I mean, your BLM riots and
yeah,
all those aspects, I mean, there's a lot more volatility within the country if you look at it now. And unfortunately, I think we're kind of heading in that direction as well, in terms
yeah.
of volatility and in terms of desperation. I mean, I just read the other day that over R1 trillion has been withdrawn from foreign investment in the country.
I'm sitting with the article in front of me. I'm busy working on doing a skidmark on it.
Yeah, now you look at that. That's R1 trillion of foreign investment that's kind of left your economy, plus your manufacturing base, which has been decimated over the last 30 years. I mean, we hardly manufacture anything anymore. Your electricity, which is failing, your infrastructure, which is failing. I mean, I was in Port Elizabeth, not Port Elizabeth, East London last week. Went down for a holiday. My wife took me on holiday, and I was looking at the buildings as we were riding through East London. And one thing that made me really make me take absolute notice. I rode past the McDonald's, and they couldn't even maintain the signage on McDonald's. I mean, when you look at that, such a stark thing, you know, that it makes you realize that we have to do something fast.
Because this one guy that I'm talking to, he appears on my channel from time to time, my concerned Zulu. This guy is highly qualified.
Highly intelligent. I mean, you've got some.
He's got degrees and everything. And he says to me, Kulan, okay, he was totally against my tribal stories.
Yeah.
And that's a discussion we can have later on. But then he says to me, you know, I come from Southern Natal, and the collapse of the textile industry has decimated our society there. He said most of the women there were working in those factories, and they were getting salaries, and they could look after their families and look out for their families. Plus, they got skills, and it was a happy society because the people were employed and they were busy doing something that they could see. And all of a sudden, all those jobs evaporated, and these people are sitting now unemployed, and it's creating a lot of tension in the society. And I said to him, well, but that is just one area that you are now aware of. I can remember when in the middle 80s, late 80s, I did a lot of business in Kwakwa. And that Kwakwa was a hustling, bustling hub of activity. And the children were walking in the streets, going to school and coming back. And the people were living their lives. The factories were bustling and things like that. That is gone.
Yeah.
And that creates a situation where people become desperate. And I don't know, Richard, you know, I think that maybe the faster the central government collapse, the better.
Well,
Because
we
what,
just got to make sure that we have the new system in place, because unfortunately,
yes,
if we don't have the agreements in place between the different tribal groupings, then you're going to end up with conflict. So I believe that if you can get everyone talking to each other now within that context as tribal groupings, and
yeah,
instead of having a national council of provinces, and instead of having a tribal leaders council governed by the government, the centralized government, which is, we know what their objective is get that mechanism together where we start recognizing each other as equals, and we start talking to each other about the future. Because at the moment, we're allowing those that want to destroy our future to dictate to us.
yes,
And while we allow
interesting.
that, we're in trouble.
Look, listen to this one. I've mentioned now what the Zulus are saying to me about the Boerland in
Yes.
Natal.
Yeah.
And then you saw that the Swazi king has entered the land claim for this area up to Bronkhorstspruit, Leidenburg, that area.
Yeah.
You're aware of that?
I'm aware
I
of that.
asked them, I said, okay, but what's the story about this land claim? They say, listen, that was Boerland. It was given to the Boere by Swazi king, but now the ANC wants to steal it and we want it back. And I said, what the heck? Okay, I understand that. It makes sense. It's
Yeah.
logic.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, okay, and then I hear this, that the Chonas wants to be part of this talk and Xhosas want to be part of this talk. And I think to myself, okay, but now how the fuck is it possible that me, private guys, we're all private guys. We are getting these guys to talk to one another. Why is there not a prominent political leader that has got the guts
The Vryheidsfront.
to do it? And I think to myself, why is that? And then I come to the conclusion, in the end, it is going to be the people that will have to sort the solution out. Because the government and the politicians, they do not want to resolve this situation. The conflict levels that they are pushing is all to create chaos, and in this chaos, they're stealing more and more and more.
Well,
So,
I think what it is that as the center loses control, it needs to create chaos,
yes, yes,
because you know the whole divide and conquer
for
concept.
sure.
So as you lose control, you need to create chaos. But I also think that there's a bigger thing happening. I think that the general impoverishment of the middle class, like I said earlier, is a process towards. I mean, if you think of free trade, now the general principle, people say free trade, what a wonderful thing. No. What did free trade bring about? It brought about the centralization of economies, because all you have now is multinationals that run the world's economies.
Exactly.
Because your middle class manufacturer, your middle class or your country's manufacturing base is now being serviced in China, and you've become a consumer.
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas you used to produce it locally,
yeah,
because it's produced cheaper in China, and you're not protected in your home country because of free trade. You no longer manufacture. You take Mattel Steel. They are now closing down another plant in England, another smelter plant in England. England now no longer has the ability to smelt raw ore
yeah,
in
yeah,
order to manufacture iron. They don't possess it any longer. It
yes.
doesn't exist any longer.
And that is going to impoverish them.
But not only that, think of the risk that you run if you end up in a war where you
Which
cannot.
we have seen now. We saw it in Ukraine. The West cannot produce ammunition. They cannot.
You see the problem.
Huh.
And what happens if you end up with a coronavirus? where you no longer are able to transport anything around the world. You see, it's too dangerous what they're offering us.
You
It's
know
too
what, Richard?
dangerous what they're expecting us to accept. It's too dangerous.
Yeah. We've been going for just over an hour.
We have, yeah.
I'm very thankful that you took time to talk to us but I think me and you can have many discussions
Yes.
because I like the way that you think. I like your thought. Your thought train is something that I can identify with. But the most important thing is this: you're not thinking in a bubble. You don't, and that is so important. And I think that we must just be very careful that we don't add fuel to the fire.
No, we can't afford to. We can't afford to.
Because that landmine is lying there and there are already boots hovering over it.
Yeah.
And that will be such a disaster. And for me, the move that the Freedom Front pulled on Friday there in Centurion was a stupid move because all it did, it now created the situation that there's now a lot of Boere that say, we're not going to vote for this party anymore. We want a new party.
Yeah.
I'm not very with it, but that's what we are. And it's because we don't have clever politicians. We don't have, look, statesmen, true statesmen, where are they? Where are the true diplomats? Look, we can say about Pik Botha whatever you like. He was a rogue, but and I don't want to go down that road. But I've always said Pik Botha was the type of guy that could be the Minister of Foreign Affairs under the Nats, under the SAPs, under the ANC, under the EFF, under everybody. He will be a good Minister of Foreign Affairs.
He knew his stuff.
Because he understood the power of diplomacy.
Yeah.
But we don't have strong leaders. We don't have intelligent leaders. And I'm going to end it on that.
I believe that they're there. I just believe the system's set up in such a way at the moment that they can't emerge. But I believe they will emerge. I believe they will emerge. I believe they'll come out and eventually they're not going to raise themselves. The people will raise them up.
Yes.
And I believe that's what we've just got to, as you've started here, we've just got to keep talking the narrative, got to change the narrative so that people start realizing there is a solution. There is hope for the future. It's not all doom and gloom. There is a solution, and it's a proper solution. It's not a solution that puts us into the hands of the few. It's the solution where we all can make a difference to the few.
Well, sure. Thank you very much, Richard. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for the opportunity to have such insightful and deep conversations. I enjoy them myself, I must admit. Thank you very much.